Hey guys, it's Cole from the future. A quick word before we start the video. All the questions that I answered here were from a Twitter thread posted by Andrew Hales or Loff a couple of weeks ago asking his followers if they had any questions for me right before we sat down and did an interview together. While it was a fantastic talk, there were a lot of questions that we didn't get to, so I thought that I'd make this video. Also, according to YouTube, only a small amount of my viewers are actually subscribed, so if you haven't yet, please subscribe. It's completely free and you can always change your mind. Enjoy the video. What's up you guys, it's Cole here, your friendly American polyglot, and today we're going to be answering some questions from Twitter related to languages and polyglottery and all this other cool stuff. There was actually this one guy that I felt really bad about because he asked about 10 different questions in this thread, and they were all fantastic questions, but we just never got to any of them in the actual video. So Ed, my good sir, we're going to be answering a few of yours. Number 1. Have you developed different personalities in the other languages than your native? Elaborate. Yes, absolutely. And I have a theory for why this is. So naturally, when you first start speaking a foreign language, you're not going to be incredibly good at it because it's a skill, and like all skills, it takes time to improve. So when you first start conversing with people, your vocabulary will be pretty limited. But you can actually learn to embrace this limited vocabulary of yours, and you'll be really surprised at how much you can really say with a small number of words and phrases. And since your vocabulary is going to be pretty limited at first, you're obviously not going to be able to say the exact same thing in the exact same phrasing that you would say if you were speaking your native language. So this is one way where I think personality develops within the language. The other is the culture itself. It may just be me, but regardless of my level in any language, I feel way more outgoing and confident when I'm speaking a language like Spanish or Portuguese in comparison to a language like Chinese or Russian. And when you really start to think about those cultures themselves and how those people within those cultures interact with each other, that really starts to make a lot of sense. Like, I am way more likely to start dancing if I'm in a Spanish-speaking environment. So to wrap it all up, your personality that will be developed when you speak any other language will be determined by the experiences that you have within the language, the amount of experience you have actually conversing in the language, as well as the culture itself. Do you find that it's easy to say inappropriate things in other languages than your native language? If yes, why? If not, have you noticed? The short answer is yes, absolutely, but let me explain. So while I don't exactly go out of my way to say inappropriate things in other languages, it has to come up at some point. And I feel like this is, again, really a cultural thing at heart. Because every single word in a language has a different feeling and a perceived strength to it. Like, I think we can all agree that the word mad is slightly less serious than the word furious. And the same thing goes for swear words in the language. There are some that we say comically and some that we just don't say at all. And if you're a foreigner looking into a particular culture, you're not going to have a ton of experience with how these people use their words and why. We may associate certain words with certain feelings or time periods, or maybe even old or antiquated attitudes and beliefs. And this all contributes to how we're going to use that word in any given context. And like I said, it's entirely culturally dependent. For example, in English, we all know the C word, which is really, really bad to say in the US, but in a place like Australia, it's completely fine. So when you're a foreigner looking in on a particular culture, you're not going to know exactly what these words mean or how much weight they really hold. So it's going to be easier for you to say any kind of word in another language. So yeah, it's always going to be easier for me to say hijo de puta instead of son of a bitch. Are you bolder to be blunt in your non-native language? Elaborate. These are all very different, complicated questions that have a very similar answer. It comes down to culture. In America, it would seem rather rude if I went up to you and said, hey, you stink really badly. But in other cultures around the world, this can be seen as a very helpful remark. And I've noticed this a lot in my Dutch studies, and the way that people interact with each other in the Netherlands is much different than how we do it here. Compared to the US, people in the Netherlands are far more direct with each other when they're conversing about any given thing. Or in Chinese, if you were to just go order some food, you would literally say, I want, and then the name of the food. But in English, we would really have to go out of our way to sound more polite, like, I would like this, please. Or when you get a chance, can I please get another cup of coffee, sir? So if I'm speaking a language that comes from one of these more direct cultures, I will definitely be more direct myself because it's just how people interact with each other. So, final answer, yes. but it depends on the culture. Top 5 languages hardest to learn. Alright, so right here, right now, I'm going to debunk the idea that any given language is inherently easier or harder than any other one. The hardest language for anybody, regardless of where you're from, is going to be the language that differs the most from what you already know. So that's why if you ask an English speaker, what's the hardest language in the world, they will probably say Mandarin Chinese, because it's so freaking different. But different does not exactly equate to hard, it just means that it'll take you more time to get used to all the new concepts. So for me, it's going to consist mostly of East Asian languages. I would probably say Mandarin Chinese, Cantonese, Japanese, Russian, and Finnish. Is it possible to be/sound fluent and indistinguishable from native speakers in all your languages? So there has been a debate for a while now in the multilingual polyglot language learning community whether a person can acquire a native-like accent without actually being born in a country where that language is spoken. And a lot of people will say no on the grounds that the structure of our brain and our capacity for language changes as we get older. And that's just because any language that you already know will influence and interfere with your learning of a new one. Which is why we have foreign accents in the first place. And I've met a lot of people throughout my life that have had perfect, almost immaculate English. But at the same time, I've never ever mistaken a foreigner as an English native speaker. Of course, we don't really know, but the general rule is that if you don't grow up with it, it's very, very, very unlikely, if not impossible, that you'll ever be indistinguishable from a native speaker. But don't let that discourage you at all, because a lot of people really like foreign accents, including myself, and if you're really self-conscious about it, you can do a lot of stuff to minimize it. If it's not your native language, probably not, but you can certainly go out there and try. What made you learn that many languages? Oh boy, here we go. So I feel like one of the main reasons that we see so much division in the world today is because of things like linguistic and cultural barriers. But since language is so deeply ingrained within culture, I feel like learning a language can help us transcend both of these barriers. And by communicating with each other and attempting to create this mutual understanding, something that I say a lot, we can help see each other more as humans and not as these separating factors that we've created throughout the course of history. Because no matter where you're from in the globe, we are all human, and all humans pretty much want the same stuff. We want to be happy, we want to be healthy, and we want to be loved. And I feel like developing these healthy relationships with other humans is the best way that we can all achieve those 3 very important things. I'm also plagued with endless curiosity and this innermost desire to be constantly evolving my comprehension of the world and of the people within it. Not to mention all the incredible benefits that you get from learning a language. It can only benefit you, it's not a waste of time, so why not? What perspectives have you learned about life in general that only a polyglot would have? So I feel like the outlook of a polyglot and the outlook of a world traveler are very much aligned. I have never ever met a pessimistic polyglot or world traveler in my life, and I think there's a really good reason for that. It's because we've experienced different cultures and we've realized that people really aren't all that bad and as intimidating as they seem. If you were to go up to someone on the street and assuming they weren't busy or anything, 9 times out of 10 they'll probably be very delighted to talk to you, especially in their native language. And this is something that was really difficult for me to realize because I was really introverted growing up, but I feel like learning languages has really made me more extroverted and has really allowed me to value the presence and experiences made with other people. So call me naive, but I really feel like most people are good. And also I think that as humans we have so much more in common than we really think. So all in all, I would call it educated optimism, and that the most rewarding things in life come from the relationships that we develop with other people. Top 3 favorite languages. Oh god, man. Bruh. My languages are like my children. I have to love them all the same way, no matter what happens. Because they're all really a part of me, and the summation of all the experiences that I was able to have in these languages makes up my personality and who I am today. But if I had to choose, I would say English, Spanish, and Russian. And if we're not including my native language, I would still say Spanish, Russian, and probably Portuguese. Has there ever been an incident where he's eavesdropped on an interesting conversation in another language, or whether he's heard people talk about him in the language thinking he wouldn't understand it? This happens so often, and it's one of the many benefits that a lot of people don't see when they think about learning a language is that people are always on the sidelines, either judging or silently encouraging you. When I was an exchange student in Taiwan, I had several encounters where people came up to me and said things like, "Wow, you're the first white person I've ever seen," or "Wow, you have incredible eyes. I've never seen someone with eyes that color before." And that was after they realized that I spoke Chinese. There have been a few instances where I've caught people saying hurtful things to me in another language under the assumption that I didn't understand what they were saying, when in fact I did. And usually in these situations, I just ignore it and move on. But if it's on the opposite end of the spectrum and someone is saying something rather nice, I may even switch to that language and attempt to make a connection with the people that were just talking. And 9 times out of 10, you'll get a really pleasant encounter out of this. So yeah, it's an absolutely fantastic feeling to know that you're able to connect with people pretty much everywhere that you go. The next question comes from LJ Ridley, and they ask, does he think that the language you speak dictates the way that you think? There's been many studies done on this, and there's absolutely no evidence to suggest that this is in fact the case. So no, absolutely not. There is no language in the world that will single-handedly alter your thought process. That is up to you. Kev asks, I would like you to ask him what's his favorite way to laugh. So what Kev is getting at here is that people of different cultures express laughing and texting differently. So in English, we would say ha 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 ha. But in Spanish, instead of H-A, you would say J-A, 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 J-A. In Portuguese, they just write K a bunch of times. And I believe in Thai, it's a bunch of 8s. So if I had to pick a favorite, I'd probably go for the way of laughing in Portuguese because I love the idea of someone sitting down and going And that's pretty much it, guys. I hope you found that informative and hopefully interesting. Thank you all so much for all the support we have recently. The channel has grown so freaking much, and I'm so happy to be able to sit here and provide you guys with content and to answer your questions. I've responded to so many comments, and I'm absolutely humbled that all of you are taking such an interest in something like this. And as always, thanks for watching.